Hello everyone, and welcome to Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design's third virtual Visiting Artist, Scholar, and Designer program event. I'm Gretchen Marie Schaefer, and I direct the VASD program at REMCAD. The VASD program is an interdisciplinary resource that values passionate curiosity and explores critical, diverse, and creative inquiry. We are always so honored to further enrich the academic experience for all of our students and to engage the Denver metro communities and beyond. Today, we continue our year-long world building series as we investigate the influence of art and design in this urgent moment in which we are building our world in some extraordinary ways. And as we gather today in the center of the second wave of the pandemic and in the midst of our ongoing struggle against systemic racism and injustice, and in a landscape of growing division, I do want to acknowledge an important thing: fatigue. Zoom fatigue, election fatigue, even compassion fatigue. Those things are very real, yet here we are. We are gathering together despite the exhaustion and despite the distance. And I really believe that this kind of gathering, this resilient action of community that's poised towards the future, is in itself world building. So thank you for being an active participant as we continue to reflect on the specific ways artists and designers are building worlds in this complicated and intense time. And I really could not think of any other artist, anyone better suited to be with us right now than Liz Montague and her world building talk today titled Draw Your Feelings. Liz is a cartoonist and illustrator originally from New Jersey, and tonight she's joining us from Philadelphia, where she currently lives and works. Liz's work focuses on the intersection of self and social awareness by presenting the richness and messiness of our interior selves, full of honest and embarrassing monologues at times, run up against external forces and structures. And since I came across her work earlier this year, it has provided just the right amount of realistic, clear-headed optimism that 2020 has definitely required. And it's exciting that this kind of energy will continue in two forthcoming books Liz is currently working on, including a young adult graphic novel for Random House with publication planned for fall of 2022. Today, Liz will share work from her New Yorker cartoons and her Liz at Large column, which ran weekly in the Washington City paper, as a way to discuss topics like the racial empathy gap, relatable positivity, and emotional literacy as a tool for social justice. Built on a foundation of the often overlooked forms of revolution like self-care, empathy, and humor, Liz will talk about why emotions are the great unifier and how she centers them in her work. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Liz Montague.
Thank you so much. Move over to sharing my screen. I'm kind of nervous, guys. This is like pretty nerve-wracking. I feel like I'm on YouTube or something talking to myself. But like, hey, from Philadelphia, I hope you guys are all doing well wherever you're at. Here in Philly on Friday, our second shutdown starts. I know that we're all a bit exhausted, and hopefully this is a bright spot for you. That lump back there on my bed is Cleo. My new office is now the corner of my bedroom, which has been interesting, but you know, we adapt. So to get started, my talk today will be on drawing your feelings. This is something that my work is really rooted in, that I really believe as a person, and I'm excited to get into it. So for me, drawing your feelings is really rooted in emotional literacy. That's like the cornerstone of everything for my work. And emotional literacy refers to the ability to express one's emotional state and communicate one's feelings. This is like the very proper dictionary definition. I have it highlighted in two different colors because being able to say, this is how I'm feeling, just internally recognizing that is one thing. Like that's like a whole separate thing. And then being able to effectively communicate what you're feeling to someone else is something else entirely. to me, these are two separate acts, and emotional literacy is like brings them together. It's like a bridge. And when it comes to trying to communicate with total strangers who may think entirely different than you do or I do or any of us do, it can sometimes feel really impossible. That's something that I feel all the time when making my work. I'm like, oh my God, this is so specific. No one but me is gonna ever think like this. But I have some tricks, and these are my hacks for that. To 1, simplify, 2, be specific, and 3, simplify more. Something I've learned the more work that I do is you can always simplify more, and just how things that you don't think would be barriers can be to different people. Wasn't it in Hamlet? It's like brevity is the soul of wit. That's like this. But when I'm working on something, I often think like, this is my inner voice is often saying, does the audience need this or does my ego? When it comes to text, when it comes to imagery, am I overcomplicating it because it needs to be overcomplicated? Or am I overcomplicating it because I want to seem smart? I want to seem sophisticated. And there's always a way of phrasing things to make it more accessible. I think like I'm a perfectionist sometimes, which is not a good thing, where I'm always trying to be as accessible as possible. And sometimes like I get hung up on that, which I don't recommend. But like some of the questions that I ask myself is like, is this background really necessary? Is it helping communicate anything? And if it is, like, what is it? Why do I have it? Is there a better word that I could use? Is there a word that would be more simplified that more people could understand? I think that's something that with my New Yorker cartoons especially, I wanted to seem fancy. I was 22 when I started at the New Yorker. And I just really wanted people to take me seriously. And I think that because of that, I sometimes made work that was overcomplicated and didn't need to be. But I'll talk more about that. So when I lived in DC, I had a weekly column called Liz at Large in a local paper called the Washington City Paper. It was a single panel that ran every week. And it was basically me trying to talk about my feelings with strangers. It was utterly terrifying. Oh my gosh. It was a dream come true because this was my biggest dream, to be able to have my own cartoon strip, like, the Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, and to be presented with the opportunity was like the biggest thing. But I'd been drawing cartoons since college, and they were just something for me that I did on Instagram to make myself feel better. Here's me in college, baby me. And then this is my very first Liz at Large cartoon that I posted on Instagram, October 21st, 2016. It was my 4-year anniversary last month, and I didn't even know it. I should really put this stuff on a calendar. But just the practice of regularly identifying what I was feeling and owning it enough to draw it, and then like the willingness to share it with strangers on the internet made me a better person, which I wasn't expecting and which was not at all planned. I was able to communicate more honestly and open with people and connect with people on a deeper level, just like by this repetitive practice of being like, I'm gonna be vulnerable on the online. And people would come up to me in the dining hall and be like, oh my God, I saw your cartoon and I loved it. Like, I was just feeling that same feeling. And it would just make me feel so flattered that anybody cared enough to like take time out of their day to like come and talk to me. Like, and to see something on the internet and then like go and find that person in real life and be like, hey, this had an impact on me. That was like everything at the time. But anyway, for Washington City Paper, what you may not know about print is, unlike with digital stuff, you have to send the final in a week to 2 weeks before. So everything has to be given in advance so that it has time to print. So by the time that like anything is in the reader's hands, it's already a week old. My cat Cleo just woke up. She's fussing, but she'll fall back asleep. Go to sleep. So yeah, by the time that it's in the reader's hands, that drawing is already a week old. And in our 24/7 news cycle, that's super, super daunting. I wanted to create something of value that like could help people. I mean, at the time I was living in Washington, DC. This was like, now we know that it was the final year of the Trump presidency and the Trump administration in DC. And things just felt really bleak and intense. And it was definitely like just a lot going on, a heaviness in the air. You'd be on the metro and everyone just looked sad. And I really wanted to contribute something that felt like something substantial that would make people feel better. But I couldn't get too specific about current events because, again, like no one's gonna see it until at minimum a week later. And then there were times when it was like I had to get it in 2 weeks early. So I had to create content that was evergreen. And evergreen is just a fancy way of saying that like it's always relevant. And cartoons that would connect to a lot of different types of people. And I had to do it weekly. And on top of this, I also had a full-time job as a graphic designer. But yeah, you have to make something that can connect to everyone while still having it like feel authentic to you, because you don't get to pick your audience. And that's something that I'm glad that I feel like I have a proper, not disassociation, but just a reality that like once I've made something and it's out there, like it goes away. It's like sending your kids to college, you know, they go and have a life of their own. You don't know what they get up to, but they just go and have their own life. That's kind of like how it is. I really eased in and I've gotten bolder over time for sure, but I just tried to be honest. I would hone in on one specific instance and the absolute bones of what made me feel whatever it was I was feeling, because I only had a single cartoon to communicate it in. I actually really like the single panel format. It is super challenging because you are really limited, but I think I like that. I like the limitations. I think it's like, it makes for a lot of problem solving that I find really fun. And I also can get really overwhelmed by walls of text and even like a lot of like visual information. I get visually overstimulated very easily. I'm sensitive like that. Yeah, so like I really like just like super bare bones. I'm a drawing minimalist, I guess. But I wanted to get to the bare bones of things, but I didn't want to just be whiny. I like wanted to be honest, but not whiny, which is a hard balance for me, because sometimes I can get a bit whiny. But I wanted to offer comfort to people. So I created this dynamic between the human and the dog character, who's based on my childhood dog, Timmy, who's still alive. She's like 16 years old, back with my parents. And my dog would give me advice. It's basically the worst and best parts of myself in conversation with each other. And it created this really relatable positivity, I think, because of how honest I was about the worst part of myself. And with the human character, you know, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. That's just, you know, life. Sometimes it is you're face down on the floor for 3 hours. And I tried to be transparent about that. And I think that it balances out like the preachiness of the dog in a really accessible way. Because I didn't just want it to be all, you know, you can do it, it'll get better. And it will, and you can do it and it will get better, but sometimes you need to be able to see the face down on the floor moments when it doesn't at all feel like it's gonna get better, but it will, I promise. But I was terrified when it first started running. I was originally only supposed to do it for 7 weeks, and then it ended up getting extended and did it for months and months. And then I only stopped because I moved to Philadelphia when the pandemic hit. It was really well received, and I even ended up getting the Best of DC Visual Artist 2020 because of that column. And I'm really proud of it. I'm so proud of it. I see people like sometimes we post it on Instagram and I'm just like, I feel like a proud parent, you know, every time I'm seeing it, I'm like, I know that. Um, but it made me realize the power of drawing your feelings, because people would say to me like, yes, that's it exactly. That is exactly how I felt the other day when I locked my car keys in the car and I forgot to do such and such at work, and this is exactly what I needed to hear. And it would just relate to people so much, which I just found so cool, because I was like, you know, it would be experiences so different from mine. And I thought it was incredible that like this thing that I made because of something entirely unrelated could act as this like connection between me and someone who I never met and who didn't know me. And these are people across all races, ages, socioeconomic statuses, and they were all saying that they could relate to this little Black character that looked so different from them. And that's when I really started to understand that emotional literacy could be a tool for social justice, and just being able to use it as a bridge between people. Connecting to people, and especially connecting to Black people that that you don't personally know, and maybe ones that you do know, has been a bit of an uphill battle because of this thing called the racial empathy gap. It's a really complex thing, and I didn't want to oversimplify it with a one sentence definition, because there's a ton of research out there, and I highly recommend that you look into the research. But to summarize it, it's basically the research has shown that it's hard for white people to words are hard sometimes. It's hard for white people to empathize with Black people. And there's a great 5-minute NPR like audio that is a deep dive into this. But somehow like it's a deep dive, but it's only 5 minutes, but it also like really articulates all of the research really well. And it's a really great intro into the racial empathy gap. And you should totally Google it. It's called Whites Think Black People Feel Less Pain. That's a gutsy title. I know I shouldn't be laughing because it's not funny, but I can appreciate the boldness of that title, but I need to get it together. It's a really straightforward title, but it does summarize this research basically. And yeah, it talks about that it's basically assumed that Black people feel less pain. That's the summary of it. Because of all the different things that Black people have been through, and you know, all of these different societal expectations, you know, for example, the strong, independent Black woman, et cetera, there is this idea that Black people feel less pain overall, like with everything. And it's a really huge problem. It's a huge problem in healthcare, where the mortality rate of Black women is incredibly high. Black patients receive less pain medication. It's a huge problem in the criminal justice system, especially the juvenile justice system, where Black kids and Black boys especially are usually charged and tried as adults. It's just a problem in everything. And even in the arts, it's why we see less Black leads in TV shows and movies, and just less Black protagonists in general. Studies have shown that white audiences have a harder time connecting to Black characters and empathizing with them. And it's a cycle of unconscious bias that just perpetuates all of this pain, because if you have it in your head that this person will feel less pain, and then they're exposed and have to experience more pain because of that, then it just like the cycle just keeps going. And it just made me so sad when I learned about that. I mean, because it's just, nobody knows what they don't know. There's a saying, it's like, the brain can't know what the eyes can't see what the brain doesn't know. And that's like very, very real. So it can kind of feel like you're up against like this ghost, because, you know, we all have things that we don't know that we don't know. But anyway, once I learned about that, it hit me really like what it meant when people would message me and say, yes, that's exactly what I'm feeling, and the power of that. Because just the awareness that like with each cartoon, I'm not just connecting like people to me, but maybe I'm connecting them to other people who look like me. And like, maybe I'm helping to unravel some of this unconscious bias that we all have. Like, even in the study, they were saying that Black people think Black people feel less pain. And like, that really blew my mind, because it's just like how these unconscious biases can be internalized by everyone. It's something that, you know, affects us all. You know, race is a construct and it touches everyone, because whiteness is a construct as much as Blackness is a construct. And then it's a construct that we're all simultaneously existing in, but we do often focus on, you know, Blackness, but we really don't like break down and examine whiteness in the same way. But both of them are they're constructs. They're made up, you know, little tents that we like shoved everybody under. It's wild, but yeah. But I do want to emphasize that it's not on Black people to have to constantly like say their feelings to be treated like equals. That's not at all what I'm saying. I, as an artist and an individual, made this choice to, you know, feel my feelings in public. Yeah, drawing my feelings made me feel better because my emotions felt easier to handle and I had an outlet for them. And I was able to marry my artist practice with my activism, which is like, that's the dream, that's the goal. And having a way of being an activist that pays, that's a huge one, makes me feel better, hopefully helps the world, and is sustainable. Like, that's the dream. And it's something that I can and like want to keep up with. Something that I've noticed, like, especially in light of everything going on, is just like, activism is exhausting. It really is. There's like just so much going on right now. And I think that for me, finding a way to like make it sustainable and make it something that I can do every day, something that I can do and like make a living off of, has just been like revolutionary. And I think that like, no, we shouldn't expect everyone to try to be perfect. We should just expect everyone to try, because there is no such thing as perfection. That's a made up thing that people made to sell products. There's no perfection. We're all just out here guessing, and that's okay, because everything is fine. Everything is fine. But while all of this was happening and I was learning all of this, and I was also making cartoons for the New Yorker. I started at the New Yorker. I was 22, or I had just turned 23. I'm 24 now. I'll be 25 next month, in December. But I was like 23. So it's like been a year and some change, maybe almost 2 years. I was clueless. I was totally clueless. I had no idea. When I started at the New Yorker because I had sent an email that I didn't think anybody would read. I was at my job, my 9-to-5 job as a graphic designer, scrolling through Instagram, which I wasn't supposed to be doing. And I followed the New Yorker cartoons on Instagram, and I was just scrolling through, and I was like, oh my God, like all these cartoons are white. Like, and then if you connect that back to like, you know, again, the racial empathy gap and, you know, the lack of Black protagonists, the lack of Black perspectives, it's just like, it just started boiling up inside of me. And I was like, oh my God, this is why there are, you know, Black mothers dying in the hospital. You know, that's not even a fully rational thought, but I freaked out and I sent an email. And they emailed me back, and they asked me who I would recommend as far as diversifying the cartoonists. And I recommended myself. And to this day, I am not sure how I was so bold. Actually, no, I know why I was so bold. And it's because I had no idea. My awareness of the New Yorker was Instagram. I followed them on Instagram, and that was it. I think I maybe saw a New Yorker magazine like twice in a dentist's office. And I had like just no recollection. Sometimes being an outsider can work in your favor. But anyway, for the print issues, it's similar to the Washington City paper process, where cartoons are done way in advance of publication, and you don't know when they're going to get published or like what's going to be happening in the world when it comes out, as far as in the print physical issues. So the cartoons kind of have to be evergreen in a way. But with the daily cartoons, which run every morning, they have to be in by like 9 a.m. or something like that. So like you watch like the news for the day that night, and then you get it and get the draft in by 9 a.m. the next morning. And they run it around noon online and on social. So you have like an hour or maybe like 2 hours to do edits, like once you hear back. But you're able to be like much more responsive about what's happening, and like you're able to just like really respond to the news in a way that like I personally like wasn't able to do in any of the other outlets that I was working for. So I've done 11 cartoons that are at New Yorker now, which is so wild that I've done 11. That feels like totally madness, but and 6 of them have been in print. 6 of them have been in print in the weekly magazine, and 5 have been online. And one of them was from this summer during the murder. One of them was from this summer during the protest after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others. Right here, this one. It's like I mean, you guys can see it, but I'll say it anyway. It's 2 women talking to each other, and the caption reads, "Just ignore it. My white friends keep checking in on me because they think racism is new." And like, I already did a video talking about this like for the New Yorker. But like, I guess like just like touch on some things like visually in it. You have the Black Lives Matter sign, which I wanted to make sure I got in there. The I can't breathe buttons, the T, because Black wellness is important, and taking a breath and taking time for yourself is very important. And fun fact, the background is based on my parents' kitchen, which is where I was when I drew this. I drew this in 2 parts. I like drew the background, was like watching the news and was like, oh my God, like somebody has to talk about this and make something about it. And like, there was just so much going on and so many feelings were happening. And I was just like, at the very least, like, I know I'm not the only one feeling this, and I want like this feeling to be on the record. So I really like, I don't know, it was a really tough moment for sure. But I won't get too much into this, and then I got too much into it. Anyway, but this was the most honest and fully transparent New Yorker cartoon I've ever done. Like, I was absolutely terrified at what the response would be. Like, when making cartoons for an outlet like the New Yorker, you kind of just like, again, like I said, for Washington City Paper, like, you know, you make your cartoon, then you send it off to college. Like, you have to let it fly into the world, and you really just don't have any control on it after that. You don't get to sit over people's shoulder and be like, well, this is what that means, and this is what you're supposed to think. Like, the whole idea of supposed or any meaning that I had attached to it disappears, and you know, then it's just who the meaning is kind of projected onto it with whoever interacts with it, and I have no control over that. And it can be like definitely a really scary thing with like an audience of millions like the New Yorker. But this one in particular, I was real scared. And they put it on they put it on like the main New Yorker Instagram too. And I was like, oh my God, like, what are they doing? What are they doing to me? But the response was actually really, really good. Like, I think that it was as good as it could have been in that moment. And that like, I was really proud of pushing through to like create something for that time, because it was that like, I just like, I don't know, it's hard to make art when things are hard, which I'm sure like a lot of you guys already know that, but like, it can just feel like, well, what's the point? I'm so tired, I don't feel like doing this, like, can't somebody else, like, why me? That's something I thought about during that time a lot, where it's just like, well, why me? Why can somebody else just do this? But I'm glad that I pushed through in that moment. Although I do not endorse hustle culture and overworking yourself. Go and take a nap. But it's not, I don't think it's a coincidence though that this being the most honest cartoon that I did got the biggest response of any of the cartoons I've ever done for them out of all 11. Like, I don't know how I was brave enough to do that, but like, I'm really glad I did. I remember after this cartoon came out, I like did an interview with NPR, and they did the video as well, like How to Draw a Social Movement, which is the video I did with the New Yorker. Like, this was definitely like, it got really huge, and I'm really proud that like, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it. But anyway, that moment and the reaction to it taught me how even with tougher feelings, there's a lot of power in being honest and transparent. And it was really healing for me, actually, to be able to identify where my frustration in that moment was rooted. Because at the time, it was just like, you know, an attack from all sides. It's like, there's a pandemic, all this stuff is going on. They're still, you know, attacking Black people. And it was just like having to sit down and draw something and like focus enough. Like it like cleared the smoke in a way that I didn't think was possible. Because, you know, police violence is awful and unacceptable, and it always has been, but it's not new. And racism isn't new. But like seeing white people caring about it so vocally and publicly was really new. And the fact that it was so new and that it was just like so obviously new, it really pissed me off. And I really wanted to say something about it. And I'm really glad that I did. And it like, yeah, I'm really glad that I did. But again, to clarify, it's not on Black people to explain or do anything in the midst of a very traumatic and turbulent time. I, as an artist, aware of the platform that I had, chose to do this, and I was compensated for it. And that's a big one. So general disclaimer, you know, like obviously like capitalism and trauma it's complicated, but like it does matter that like I did spend my time doing this and it was hard, but like this was like I am like an independent contractor for the New Yorker, so I do get paid for my work. So that's like an important. I'm trying to be more, or I'm trying to encourage being more transparent about just like getting paid and being paid as an artist, because I think that payment is a huge barrier for especially like people of color in the art industry, Black people especially. For me personally, like I went to college on a track scholarship. You know, that's why I chose the university that I went to. I had a great time at University of Richmond, but like I chose because I got a track scholarship. And like I didn't become an art major until the end of my sophomore year, because I was like, starving artist, I'm not gonna be able to support myself. And that's like not at all the case. And so I wanna do my part in ending that myth. Yeah, but back to this cartoon. A lot of people were feeling a lot of things, and this cartoon was able to be a starting point for a lot of conversations. And I'm really proud that my emotions and feelings could do that. Like my feelings could led to conversations that, you know, made truer friendships and deeper connections, and, you know, maybe started a conversation that wouldn't have happened. And that's like a really cool thing about feelings. It's just like, you never know where they'll go. It's like a little mystery path. But yeah, in Western culture, we're just so socialized to be afraid of our feelings and are taught this idea that there's like a right or wrong way to feel. And we end up really judging ourselves for it in a negative way. But there is no like right feeling or wrong feeling. Just like embrace all the feelings, like all of them, seriously. Like Glennon Doyle, she's great. She always says feelings are for feeling. That's really true. And another thing that she says that's really true is like, there's no finish line at the end of life for she who suffered most. That's very true. There's no point in recreational suffering if it can be avoided. Yeah, I just talked really, really fast, and I talked through a lot of things really quickly. I hope it sounded connected, but yeah, but I just really want to encourage you guys to draw your feelings, good, bad, ugly, like all of it, even if it terrifies you, especially if it terrifies you, because if it terrifies you, there's definitely someone out there who's also feeling those feelings. And I think it's important to know that like, you're never really feeling alone. When I worked in 9 to 5, I worked as a graphic designer for a foundation that worked in international development. So the foundation mainly worked in like Africa, Asia, that region. And for my job, I got to go to Tajikistan for like 2 months. This time last summer, I was in, no, not this time. Last summer, not this summer, obviously because of the pandemic. That's where I was in Tajikistan for like a month or 2 months because of my job. And I remember I was in this really remote village next to the Panj River, in the Tajik mountains, and like in the Pamir mountains, Tajik people, Pamir mountains, Panj River, which is like the river that divides Tajikistan and Afghanistan. And like it was like a 14-hour drive on the side of a cliff, and I was in like the middle of the mountains. Like there was no sun, there was no light, there was no anything. And we ended up going to this little like a little party in this village. And so we were there. I was like 23 at the time. I did not speak Tajik. I did not speak the local language. I did not know what was going on. But out of like sitting next to me, there was like this girl looking at this boy, like smiling and like clearly wanted to dance. And I just remember I had this like feeling that I was like back at like in middle school. And like, I don't know, the fact that I was on the other side of the world with these people whose language I didn't speak, but I could see them and see their feelings and their emotions and like be like, I know that. That was like a really profound experience for me to be able to like experience that. I don't know. And it really affected my art and my work because I really do truly like in the depths of me believe that we do all feel the same things for different reasons. It's like how in math, like, you know, 2 + 2 can equal 4, but 3 + 1 can also equal 4. And so can 6 - 2. And I'm not even great at math, but that's like in my head, that's the calculation that I do. And when I used to teach creative wellness in DC, I used to teach a creative wellness class, and it was so much fun. I should do that. But I would encourage people to draw conversations with their houseplants. And I really encourage you guys to do that too, because you know, your houseplants might have something, you know, entertaining to tell you and something enlightening to tell you. And really, it's like you have all the proxies that you need to. It's like when people tell you like when you need advice for yourself, so you think, oh well, what would I tell my best friend? And then like the advice that you tell your best friend is the advice that you should use for you. It's like that, where somehow, I mean, because, you know, self-image is a complicated thing, feeling is a complicated thing, having like a vessel to like put our feelings in and a place to direct our emotions at, it helps. Like, it's like I want to say a magnifying glass, but that's not the word that I'm thinking of. It helps focus it, like whew, have it directed at one thing. But use whatever proxies you need to and have fun with it. You know, what are 2 pillows saying to each other? What are, you know, your makeup brushes saying? I just said that because I looked over and I saw my makeup brushes. But I highly recommend it, even if it like, and honestly, do this, like, you can do this just for yourself. Like, and that is a huge disclaimer, I guess I want to say, just for your own understanding. And if you feel called to share it, then please do. But I think that like, don't feel like the only way to make a difference is to feel in public, because by being more in tune and in touch with yourself, you become more in touch with others automatically, and you're making the world a better place by doing that. Like, and that's really awesome that like by understanding ourselves better, we can understand other people. And it's all just like a big circle. It's all connected. Yeah, and it helps a lot. It helped me. I'm a highly anxious person. Like I was really anxious about this talk. I feel like I'm doing YouTube or something. Like, hey guys, welcome to my tutorial. And I talked really fast, and I have 8 pages of notes, and I talked through all of them. But I can just keep talking. My last slide was draw your feelings, which is something I highly recommend doing. Yeah, I mean, I can talk more about teaching. I used to teach a class called Creative Wellness at a place called the Lemon Collective in DC, which was like adults could like sign, I mean, not just adults, everybody could sign up and take classes. And I would specifically work on having people talk to their inner child. So like write a conversation between, you know, you and your 12-year-old self, you and your 9-year-old self, maybe your 12-year-old self and your 30-year-old self, you know, switch it up a little bit. And then also conversations with like your future selves. So it's like, what would I say to my 13-year-old self? You know, not 13, that's not older, 80-year-old self, and getting like advice from right now for in the future. it's a really cool thing because I think that we have access to all of ourselves, you know, our younger selves, our older selves. It's all nestled in these little our bodies. I don't know if I'm making sense. Um, yeah, but that's a really great exercise. Another great exercise. I mean, as far as like feeling like the effect that your environment can have on you, a fun drawing exercise is to draw eggs, weirdly enough, in different environments. Like I also taught another class at, I forget where, Micah. I did a guest class there once. And one of the exercises I had students do was to draw an egg writing a love letter to its shell, like an egg yolk writing a love letter to its shell. And they're in different settings. One was like on the floor of a barn, like as if the egg just like fell and broke. Another one was in a frying pan. And another one was, what was it? It was like the egg is like already cooked. And so it's like a finished breakfast, and like how those different environments impact what that love letter says, what that conversation is. Yeah. I don't know if this is helping. I hope it is. Yeah, this is a bit unnerving. Hey.
We have, if you don't mind, do you mind if we jump in? I invited our audience to enter a couple of questions. Is this a good time, you think? Or
Yeah.
I will let you keep rolling. Like, this is
a great time.
Fantastic. And I have notes now of all these fantastic drawing prompts for sure. But yeah, if you don't, do you mind if I just ask a couple questions from our audience? Cool. And I'll just let our audience know, please feel free to enter any questions you have in the chat. I might read some of them off, depending, you know, or I might invite you actually to come on and ask your question. But please enter your questions for Liz while we have her here. It's a great chance to chat with her some more. But kind of connected to what you were just talking about the access to different ages of ourselves. One of our students is wondering if you could go back now, looking at what we just saw here and all these experiences and things and this really amazing blossoming, you know, near exploding career that you're in right now. Would you change anything if you could go back?
I wouldn't change anything. Let's say that definitively. I wouldn't change anything, but like it definitely, like, everything makes more sense now than it did then. In the thick of it, like, oh my God, like there are things like back then that I would have changed. I wasn't necessarily thrilled about being an athlete. I never felt like I had like the killer instinct that I felt was needed. I felt like I should have started art earlier for a long time. I felt like I should have gone to a proper art school instead of a liberal arts school. I questioned whether I should have even, you know, gone to university and gotten a 4-year degree. I questioned everything. If there was anything I would change, it would be to just like stop stressing out so much. Like I was so anxious. I would give myself the worst panic attacks. It would just be so out of control just because like you don't know how things are going to end up. And I just wanted to know how everything was going to end up. And that, you know, now I can look back and it feels like it's all like tied in a neat little bow. But in the thick of it, oh, it was a hot mess. It was such a hot mess. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I changed my major so many times. I didn't think I was going to graduate on time. I almost dropped out of school. None of it makes sense in the thick of it, but it usually does work out in the end. So I hope that helps.
Great advice. We all need that right now, I think, too. Let's see, Rami, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Rami, just wants to thank you and wants to know a little bit more about your process, starting a cartoon, the kind of iterations you have to go through, ideation, that kind of stuff would be great to hear more about.
I even like started making a slide literally about that, about like what my process was. And then like I had to be like honest with myself that like my process is really erratic, which I don't recommend. You should have like a regimented way of doing things every time so that like your brain can be focused enough and be like, okay, like, you know, she's getting out the red pen, time to focus and do this specific thing. Honestly, it's like for the Liz at Large cartoons, which are much more like feelings based, I'll like usually be like thinking about a feeling or a moment for like maybe like a few days. And I'll like write down maybe some really, really rough text. Like I'm a text person, I do text first, and then I'll do like a really super rough sketch, and then like I'll like work on that composition and then really think about like the text, and usually like drive myself like mad being like, does this make sense? Will other people actually, relate to this? Do that for a few hours, really, give myself a headache. And then like whenever I'm brave enough to post it, that's when it goes up, because that's something that, now I can do on my own terms. With the New Yorker, it's usually like a much, like, as far as me drawing it, a quicker process, because that's very responsive. Like if I see something on the news, if I'm hearing, a conversation about the current events, like I'll immediately be like, I'll immediately know what I'm thinking with a lot more clarity than I'll know what I'm feeling. And then I can just like, again, text first. I do like the sentence of text first, and that usually will get edited down and simplified more than whatever like stream of consciousness thing I have. And then I'll start working on composition. I'm very partial to a triangle composition because blank pages are really scary. So like sometimes the first thing I draw is like a really big triangle, just so like, because it's always a square shape, and then I do a triangle inside of it, and then I'm like, oh my god, like it's basically full. It's not that scary. And so then I'll like place characters and think about, well, who makes sense talking about this? What's the environment? What do I want the environment to say? Do I want the environment to say anything? Do I want it to be a neutral environment? What is a neutral environment? And you can just go down those rabbit holes for days, but I can't because there are deadlines. So then for the New Yorker, like I said, for dailies, that's due at 9 a.m. And you can send in like whatever your feelings are, I guess, about the news or current events. And then for the imprint, those are due on Tuesdays at noon. And you just can send like 5 to 10. So it's a pretty decent amount of like cartoons to be making when you're really in the thick of it. Although, like, to be honest, I'm a bit out of practice. I'm in the midst of writing 2 books right now, graphic novels, and it's a lot. So I haven't been in the thick of the cartooning in a second. But that is the process when I am in the thick of it. Yeah.
That's great. I think one person here was asking, it seems like it's a good time to go to this question. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, let me find it.
You're good.
Because it's connected to what you're just talking about. Oh, okay, Emily. Just again, thanks you for being here and being so honest and vulnerable. And she wanted to see if you see yourself working for the New Yorker. I mean, now you have these book projects, but so that is kind of switching things up. But she's wondering about kind of changing things throughout your career. Are you worried about burnout? How do you deal with burnout? And maybe just she wants to know a little bit more of plans and ideas. So maybe you can even tell us a little bit more about those books.
These are great questions. Yeah, I feel like I'm much more conscious of burnout now than I was at first. I think that at first I was like highly subscribed to like hustle culture, grind out. I was like, 23 living in DC, and it was just kind of like, the thing that everyone did was like work themselves into the ground. But like, it was just like literally too much for me. Like I would get like shooting migraines. My shoulders would always be, up to here all tense, and my brow would be furrowed, and I would just be like at my full-time job, then come back and like do cartoons for Washington City Paper, and then do the cartoons for the New Yorker. And it was just like too much. Like I felt just like so creatively drained. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want anybody to look at me. I didn't want to make anything. It was like, everybody just leave me alone. And I just was at this place where I wanted to like quit everything. And that's when I knew like, okay, I probably just need a rest. But it took me a really long time to leave my 9 to 5. And I didn't do that until I got my first book deal, just for like transparency. And then I was working, then the pandemic hit, and then everything changed as far as just like what even a job is, what's happening, what security even is. Although like I am in a really like position where I do feel really secure and like I do have like very consistent projects, and I was able to do like all this insanely cool stuff over the summer, like, you know, the Google Doodle and work with US Open and working with, you know, the Biden campaign, now President-elect Biden. I mean, I didn't set out, unlike a lot of my coworkers at the New Yorker, I didn't necessarily set out to be specifically a New Yorker cartoonist. I didn't even like on purpose set out to be a cartoonist. Like I didn't really have any of that language as far as like cartoonist, a gag cartoonist, a single panel like that. I was in my mind, I was just drawing pictures and posting them on Instagram. And then like all of that other stuff like came later. So it was just kind of like, I don't want to be like, oh, it all just happened, because it definitely didn't. An opportunity presented itself and I like jumped on it, and I'm so grateful for it. And it is incredible. Like it's awesome to be able to have that. But I am like I'm an independent contractor. It's like you're a 1099 employee, not a W-2. So I'm able to come and go as I please, and I have a lot of freedom. And now I think when I first started at the New Yorker, I felt a lot of pressure to be like the Black perspective in a way that I don't anymore, because we just have more Black cartoonists. We have a lot of incredible new talent at the New Yorker, and they're doing just like so amazing. And I think when I first started, I was just like, well, if I don't talk about this stuff, then who will? And I put a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself. But now I don't like reading the news, which is a tough place to be in as a cartoonist. I don't like reading the news. I find it, especially, it can just get very, very bleak, especially during the pandemic. It just got really bleak, and I was feeling a lot of burnout, which is why I took a bit of a break. I mean, I also have 2 books to write, and I do like a lot of work with like clients and stuff, illustration wise. So, I mean, long story short, I don't know. I try not to like pigeonhole myself into anything, because like the very real reality is I'm 24 years old, which is like really young. I know when I was in college, I thought 24 was like super old, but it's not. And I still am trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I really like writing books. I really like the freedom of working for myself. But you know, we're all just out here guessing. But burnout is something that I take really seriously, because I've definitely like, that was my go-to at the beginning, was just, you know, ride until the wheels fall off. And I really don't suggest that. I feel like I create a lot better now. I feel like I'm making better quality stuff. And like nothing is ever really worth like, you know, giving yourself migraines and losing sleep. Like get some sleep, get some water. It'll be there, you know, in a day, a week, a month, as long as you need. And if it's not, then like better things are coming. I hope that answers the question.
I mean, drinking water is always fantastic.
Great thing.
But yeah, I think since we're on this kind of advice area, we do have a question specifically about like graduating from art school. Obviously, this is a unique moment that was different from when you graduated. But yeah, any advice or thoughts for our students who are about to graduate?
My biggest advice would be, don't compare yourself to everyone else. And I know that's like so much easier said than done. I was like spinning myself into such a panic. Oh my gosh. I applied for, I kid you not, probably 150 jobs. And I heard back from exactly one. I heard back from one job. I went on one interview, and that is the one 9-to-5 job that I had as a graphic designer at the foundation. And I never had an internship. None of it. Oh my God. I would look at the business school students who'd be like, oh yeah, you know, just got done my internship and you know, got 3 job offers. I got exactly one. And it is the one job that I had. So, you know, don't let that, just like relax. I mean, I know that that's like so much easier said than done, but just take like the pressure off of yourself. I think that like, especially right now, this is such a unique time in history and like just making it this far, like graduating from college, like that's such a big deal. Like I don't think I gave myself enough credit in that time and in that moment to just like how big of a deal that was. Like globally, college grads are in like the super minority. Like even being literate, even like these are just things that are just like very incredible. But I think that right now, you know, we're in the highlight reel social media moment where it's just like this idea that, oh, this is all just the norm, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, no, this is like an incredible feat. This is an incredible thing to get an education, especially like an excellent school like Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, and from anywhere really. Like it's like such an awesome opportunity to just get to go and like learn. And so I would just like soak that up as much as you can, because like even when I was in college, I was a Division I athlete, so I was on scholarship, and I worked 2 jobs, and I was doing freelance stuff on the side. I worked at the museum at my school, and I worked in the digital lab. And I, even doing all of that, you never have like free time like you have in college. And somebody told me that once in college, and I wanted to punch them in the face, but it's true. Just like the mental space that you have. And like when you graduate, better stuff comes. Like I don't believe in that whole like best time of your life. All the time is the best time of your life. And like there are always better and cool stuff, you know, coming. But like you just like have this like, you know, mental space to just like focus on what you want and do what you want. And I would just, you know, make the most of it, work on stuff that you care about, and like talk to your friends. Like I know that now it's like it's different because socially distanced, we're on Zoom and everything, but like that's like the hardest part is when you graduate and everybody has different schedules and it's in different time zones. And I mean, I guess that's kind of what's happening a little bit now, but like it's once like people just have, you know, families and their careers and stuff, it can get really hard to just get everybody together. So really like appreciate those friendships and relationships. Yeah, biggest advice.
Yeah, that those networks and communities are key for sure. Let's see. So Claire noticed that you mentioned Glennon Doyle earlier and wants to know if there are any other writers or specific books that you'd recommend. And before you answer, Liz, I'll just remind everybody too that we actually asked this question of all of our visiting artists because I love to know what they're watching and what recipes they're cooking, or like what kind of thing, what are they soaking up, right? That ends up being somehow a part of their work. And so Liz did provide her recommendation list, which you can find on our website. And I'll put the link in our chat, but it's just remcad.edu/Montague. But yeah, Liz, what are other writers and things that you want to make sure people know about that you'd recommend?
The thing that comes to the top of my mind, which I think is at the top of the list that I for the recommendations that I wrote, is Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. I want to say that's his name. It's definitely called Don't Call Us Dead. And it's by this incredible poet. He's so incredible. I remember that was like one of those required reading books that I had to read from one of my art theory classes. And it ended up being one of my favorite books of all time. And I know there's this line in it that's like, don't call us dead, call us alive somewhere better. And it's just like about, you know, gun violence in the Black community, and just like, it's written by this incredible Black man. And it's just like, it was just like so profound and so like it was so positive. And I was just shocked that you could like have that like such like a out the gate a profound statement of that, like don't call us dead, call us alive somewhere better. Like just being able to like flip it on its head like that like blew my mind. So highly recommend that. I'm reading oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to remember it. Of course, that's always what happens. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean. I know his first name is Ocean. I can't remember his last name, but I highly recommend that too. That's also a poetry book. I guess I was on a bit of a poetry kick. Anything by Marjan Satrapi, I love her. Especially recommend Embroideries. Just like that book, like from just like a technical stance, is like it's an entire book that takes place in like one room. As far as like for the characters, it's like 5 characters in one room, and it's the whole book, and it's super interesting. And like the ability to write an entire, and it's a graphic novel, the ability to write an entire graphic novel that takes place in one room and have it be super fascinating just like from a technical standpoint, I was like, she's a genius, but I already knew that because Persepolis was incredible. What else? What else am I reading? I'm like looking back at my bookshelf. I'm reading Six of Crows right now, which is like a YA book. Is by Leah Leigh Burr something. Starts with a B. And it's really good. It's like a fun read. That's been like my quarantine read that I've just been like dipping into. What else? Good books. I read a lot of fiction. The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's incredible. Americana by her is also great. But The Thing Around Your Neck in particular, it's a book of like short stories, so it's like very digestible, where it's like you can read one and then walk away. All of those are incredible and just offers like these really incredible viewpoints. Exit West by, oh my God, what's his name? Exit West. You should like Google it, but that's a great book, and the writer is able to like offer these characters, and like he doesn't give them a name or anything. It's really just kind of like an environment and situations, but you feel so connected to them even without knowing their name. And just like, I remember he came and talked to us once at my school and was like, what is it to name something, and what happens when you take that name away, and does it make it more relatable? And if having no name makes something more relatable, then like, is language really separating us or bringing us together? It was deep, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's some good stuff. And I did put the link in the chat to the page on our website, and if you scroll all the way down, there's that full list and more great stuff there. Let's see, maybe just a couple of more questions. One person actually wanted you to talk a little bit more of what how you ended up in that remote village last summer, and why you were there, and is also wondering if you made any work while you were there, or like maybe how that specific experience has influenced some of your work.
Yeah. How I got there. Well, the technical side of how I got there was I flew from DC to Istanbul, Turkey, to Dushanbe, which is the capital of Tajikistan. And then we were in Dushanbe for a few days, and then we drove, it's like 14 hours out to, what was that place's name? Another village near the Panj River. And we stopped at a bunch of villages along the way. Why I was there for my job, I think my official title was like digital design and content associate, and then it changed to like digital storyteller. My job was basically to be like graphic designer, illustrator, photographer, a bit of everything. I mean, that's kind of the fun part about like working for foundations and nonprofits. It's just like you get to do a bit of everything. Because it's kind of like you just get to wear all the hats. And I was like the only like full-time designer on staff. And my job in going was to talk to farmers displaced by like climate change, because that area of the world, like the Badakhshan region, is the roof of the world. So they're at like the highest elevation in the whole world. So they're getting hit with climate change first, unfortunately, because the snow caps melt and everything, and they affect the crops. So my job was to go there and just, document and talk to people and communicate their stories. And I mean, that was like kind of a design challenge too, because I was working for a foundation that was working with a religious minority in that area. And you have to be really careful about how you depict people and how much you say, and then also like ethically, where it's just like, what does it mean for me to, as a Westerner, come here, depict these people, take it back, and like I'm, how many other Americans, other people in general are going to be in this remote village? I'm like, I'm the bridge for them, and what are my biases? What are the things that I'm not catching? Because there's so much, like there's stuff that you can say, but like you're just so limited. And I feel like that trip, I mean, because it wasn't just one village, it was like 30 villages. It was like so many places where like that aren't on any map. And it made me think a lot about just like the power you have as a communicator or as an artist to just like, you know, communicate a viewpoint, the ethics of communicating others' viewpoints, what that means, the power dynamics behind that, of who says what isn't said, why they get to say it, the power of the West, which is like, you know, a monster kind of topic to get into. But yeah, consumerism, globalization, all the big things. I feel like that affects my work a lot. That I think about that a lot, about the bigger forces at play with everything and how they affect us all. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing that all of that came out of that experience. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to ask one last question. I know we didn't get to everyone's questions, but remember, we'll be able to spend a little bit more time with Liz tomorrow, but we'll wrap up with Beauty's question. She actually, I think this is a good one to end on. She wants to know about what have been your best tips for strengthening your skill of emotional literacy. She kind of mentions that she kind of has a struggle between sharing her work simply for the audience or for herself, and also kind of feels like, shouldn't it always be for yourself in order for it to be relevant? So there's some tricky places there. So wondering a little bit more about, yeah, how you build that muscle and strengthen that skill.
I feel like with that, I learned like how I learned all things the hard way. Because when I first when I first started at the New Yorker, like I said, I had no idea what the New Yorker was, and that was kind of like, you know, a baptism by fire, where I got into it, and then it was like, holy crap, you mean like there's this whole big tradition, there's a whole way you're supposed to do it. And I was like, oh my God, like of course I had no idea. And so then I got really paralyzed for a while, just being like, well, what's a New Yorker cartoonist supposed to sound like? And what is a New Yorker cartoon supposed to be? And then I was creating this work that I didn't even really like. And then like that was the stuff that really wasn't even getting chosen, that my editor didn't even like. And I was just, it took a long time for me to feel confident enough in my perspective. Like right now, my barometer is, if I like it, then it's good enough. But it's a hard place to get to that. And it's hard with clients, because I mean, obviously, like if I have a client and it doesn't, I'm not saying that doesn't matter if I don't like it. I mean, I try to always make work that I like, but obviously at the end of the day, the client is the one that gets the say so. Like they're the ones who say like yes or no. Tips for that? I mean, my tip, I don't know if this actually helps, but I don't have any push notifications turned on my phone. Like when I remember when I was in college, I used to like post like a Was It Large cartoon on Instagram, and then like would immediately be like super gratified by like the notifications, like the like notifications that I would get. And I would be like, oh, like it was a good one. You know, a lot of people liked it. And then it becomes like that experiment with the dogs and the bells, where it's like, you know, they ring the bell and the dogs start to salivate because they think they're going to get a treat. It like programs your brain like that. And so then like when I realized that's what was happening, that like I was becoming really dependent on those likes, I was like, okay, we're going to turn off all notifications, no more push notifications. So now it's just kind of like, and then it became this thing where I posted it and I had no way of knowing if other people liked it or didn't like it, but I knew that I liked it and I liked it enough to put it out there. So, you know, and then like another good thing to keep in mind, especially as far as like posting stuff on social media, is like people look at that stuff for less than a second. Like I was used to spend hours like just like, oh my God, like should I post this? What are people gonna think? Whole time knowing like from my own social media habits that like people just mindlessly scroll sometimes. People just scroll. Like, and it just I became aware that like, okay, what's my return on investment here? If I spend 5 hours stressing about this, like, and at most someone's gonna spend maybe 3 seconds looking at this, like this isn't evening out. So I need to just like put on my big girl pants and not stress out so much about this, but it's really real and you're not alone in feeling like that. I used to feel like that all the time. Sometimes I feel like that more now, when other outlets post my stuff, like when the New Yorker is going to post something, because I have no idea when they're going to post it. And like, that's not an account I control. So yeah, but it's a muscle. You grow it like everything else. Yeah.
That's a great place to end, I think. This has been so great, Liz. Thank you for everything. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you. And yeah, be sure to take care of yourselves, drink water, take care of each other, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks.